Well, hi there. Taylor with Prep Talk. Wanted to pick up where we left off last time on our ongoing story as it relates to being caught in Hurricane Katrina without any of our preps and what we had to try to do to not only survive that period of time there, but to eventually escape that area. So in my last video, I mentioned that as we started driving around, surveying all of the damage that had taken place as Katrina had gone through the Meridian area, it was really amazing to us that, that so much damage could take place in buildings and on the roads, so much debris on the road and road signs and billboards and all those other things were all blown over. Well, we decided that we thought anyway it might be a good idea to head towards Jackson, Mississippi, a town about 60 miles or so west of Meridian, where we assumed that we would be able to find all of the food and water and preps that we would need to hang in there for several days until the power came back on and we could continue doing what we needed to do. So we headed west, and it didn't take long to realize that this was going to be a difficult task because of all of the trees and debris that were on the road. It made it extraordinarily difficult to even drive even 30, 40 miles an hour because we were constantly having to veer off the road. And as many of you may be familiar with the roads in that area of the country, you would have typically two lanes heading a direction, and then somewhere between 50 and 100 yards away, you would have the other two lanes that would be heading in the other direction. And so there's this big area between the two lanes, and we would oftentimes have to drive off of the road down into the median area in that area to get around, to get back up. And it's crazy with this big town car we had. I was so glad we didn't get stuck, because had we gotten stuck, there was nobody around to rescue us, nobody around to help us. And so as we continued on our way, every now and then, since we were driving pretty slow, I'd actually have my boy drive and I would stand up through the sunroof, and just to get a better 360 panoramic view of everything that had been taking place and all the devastation. And so as we're continuing, all of a sudden, I came back down from my perch up there looking out the sunroof, and all of a sudden I saw something across the road. I wasn't quite sure I knew what it was, but all of a sudden I said, "Whoa, TJ, wait, watch out!" And before we knew it, we had run over a power line. That's kind of a spooky deal, even though there undoubtedly was no power in the line at that time. Running over a high voltage power line is not something that makes you feel comfortable. We did, and we both looked at each other and thought, whoa, that could have been really hairy if that had some voltage running through there. And so as we continued down the road, all of a sudden we saw our first vehicle, the first car that we had seen since we had been on the road, and it was a white Chevy Blazer that was off to the right, kind of on the right-hand shoulder of the road. And so, like we could see as we were slowly coming up, there was actually a person inside. So I told my boy, "Pull over. Let's go see if they're in trouble, if they need any help or whatever." And so as we pulled over and got out of the car and went up and knocked on the window, and it was this young soldier who had been returning from Texas to get back to his military base that ended up driving right in the middle of the hurricane. And he was so afraid what had happened as he was driving that road, the power line that we had run over, he had actually hit it. It had been a little higher, and he hit it in his grill area of his SUV, and the metal that had been pushed in actually punctured his transmission cooling line. And so as he continued to drive, transmission fluid kept leaking out until he got to the point to where there was not enough transmission fluid left in his tranny to keep him moving forward, and he just pulled over to the edge, all by himself, stranded as this storm was just raging in his area. And the poor kid was just petrified. I mean, he was so happy to see us. And I said, his name was Alvin, and I said, "Alvin, look, here's the deal. we're heading towards Jackson to see if we can get any kind of supplies, food or whatever. And I tell you what, if we can find a hotel for you there in Jackson, we're happy to put you up. But if we can't, you're more than welcome to come back with us to Meridian. We have 2 queen-size beds there. My boy and I can share one, and you can have the other one, so you know you've got a place to stay tonight. And he was so grateful. And I said, look, if you'd like to come, we're heading right now. And he said, are you kidding me? He jumped out of his rig and he grabbed his duffel bag and we threw it in the trunk and we continued to head west towards Jackson. As I mentioned in one of my previous videos, we'd use a fairly sophisticated, at least for the time, fairly sophisticated GPS system. And we called the gal whose voice would be on our system Mabel, because it just sounded like it fit her voice. And so because the power was out and now it was starting to get dark, we had to rely on Mabel to make sure we were heading the right way, because you certainly couldn't see any lights anywhere. And as we kind of rounded the bend there on I-20, we knew we were to be approaching Jackson. And so as we rounded the bend, we expected to see a well-lit city and everything would be great. And we were so disheartened as we rounded that corner and found out that no, all the lights were off in Jackson. And even though Jackson had not been hit directly like we had been in Meridian, enough damage was done there that it knocked out the power in Jackson as well. So our hearts just sank because we knew now, we're in trouble. We don't have any way to get any supplies here as well. And so I'll continue with what happened next in the Jackson area on our next video. So look forward to chatting with you then. Thanks.